Thank you and welcome for joining us on another council wrap-up. This time round, I am in the house with our city administrator, Doug Reinhardt, instead of Mayor Connie Boyer. She's out of town, is my understanding. She was out of town for this last city council meeting. Not exactly sure what she's out of town for, but as we go over the meeting, one of the big things that was different was we had a pro tem running the meeting, which was councilperson
Flournoy.
Doug Flournoy. Yep. His last name slipped my mind for a second there. I don't know why. But yeah, so we had a mayor pro tem running over the council meeting. And again, council meetings are on the second and fourth Mondays of every month, except for the month of December. Due to the holidays, you guys usually schedule one. And I think that one is for the 15th, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
So, but yeah, after several long council meetings, a lot of business happening, this was actually one of our shorter ones, which was kind of nice.
Yeah. It was a nice change. It was 30 minutes, first time in 3 years that I've been here. So
now that 30 minutes didn't include the study session.
Right.
If you guys are watching the live stream online.
Right.
So the council does do a study session, kind of / work session-ish type thing, where you guys talk and discuss different items that you don't vote on during the study session. That voting and things like that is reserved for the actual council meetings.
Right.
But it gives a discussion time, correct?
Yeah. So basically, the difference between a work session and a study session is a work session is usually held on the weekends, and they could be 4 hours, 5 hours long, and they really take a deep dive. Study session is basically for the entire council to pick one or two items that they really would like council review. It also subsidizes some of the committee meetings, and they're televised, and hopefully we think it makes it more efficient. And we don't know, in future evaluations, study sessions may become longer and more frequent. We just don't know yet. It was a trial and it seems to be working well. So this year we've been doing those and people are pretty happy with them.
I was going to say, and I think some of that was just kind of due to scheduling stuff too, availability and things like that. But again, it opens up that time of discussion that can take place. I want to say maybe in a little more of an informal-ish type thing, but yet still following all the rules that you got to follow.
Right. So we try to make it as public as possible, and due to, we want to be as transparent as we can. There isn't a quorum required because it's just a discussion. And when we do have meetings, and if there's not a quorum and they talk, it is no longer a meeting, it's a discussion. And so we kind of get those things out there, and then they can decide whether it really needs a deeper look, and they may take it to a council action, or they may decide that it needs to go have a further look into a committee and take a deeper dive. That's what that's for.
So no, they've actually, I think, been a great addition to the city council meetings, being that I'm there live streaming as part of the media center. So I know I've enjoyed them. It really does kind of prep even for the city council meeting a little bit, which is great.
And honestly, council meetings are a business meeting. I mean, it's to handle city business, and that's not the time where they go into great detail. It's their action items of yes or no. It's a vote. And oftentimes they will actually seek more clarity during the council meetings. And so there'll be some of that interaction, but we try to do that, before the meetings so that we can get in and get to business and get things done.
Yeah, exactly. And I just like you just said, city council meetings are a business meeting. They can be dry at times. Not joking. Yeah. I mean, I've had people tell me they turn it on in order to go to sleep sometimes. Right. So I mean, they can be boring, and full of legalese and all that kind of stuff. At the same time, though, that's where you find out what's going on in the community. That's where you're going to approach your city leaders, things of that nature, if you're not already emailing them or calling them, individually as your representative. So, no, city council meetings are great. If you don't come to them, please do. If you can't, they are live streamed on the Fairfield Media Center YouTube page, as well as our website as well, fairfieldmediacenter.com. And again, we just try to help out with that transparency, just kind of like this show does. We're going into reviewing the last city council meeting, which was the 10th, correct? If I got my dates right. Anymore, I can't trust my brain when it comes to dates. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the city council agenda.
So, I mean, like I said, it wasn't a long meeting at all. There's always these parliamentary procedures. The one nice thing about the state of Iowa, and I think it's common practice throughout every city, is the consent agenda. And we run claims and what have you. Every dime that we expend goes on the council packet for approval. Now, a lot of states, anything over $75,000, they have some sort of a threshold that they say, okay, if it's over $75,000, it goes for a council vote. But in the state of Iowa, they put everything, and you can view our claims and what we're spending money on. So, that we're making sure that we're not hiding anything, that the public knows that if we're buying computers, you see those computers, or if we're buying office chairs, or if we're buying fuel or what have you, that's always up there. And then anything over $75,000, then that's a conversation for them to vote on individually from the rest of the city expenditures, which is the overhead.
One of the other things I love about the consent agendas is you guys get the committee notes from the different committee meetings that take place. Yeah. And so I think that's a great feature as well. It's kind of a one-stop shop for what's happening, not only monetarily in the city, but, through the meetings as well.
Right. And then the other thing with the consent agenda is when we hire someone, it doesn't matter whether it's me or whether it's a parks employee or fire department or, Parks Department, whatever it may be, those go through and they ask for a council vote to hire an individual employee when they come on, which is also nice. And it helps us introduce if, the individual, and another one would be the police department, what have you. So there was one of those on the agenda that I think that they had hired a new lifeguard, which is the thing about Fairfield is we have an indoor pool, so we actually need lifeguards year round, which is pretty uncommon for a lot of communities. So
in indoor pools, safety first.
Yeah, that's right, and we always have to have them. So the next thing is we did we're getting ready to do an overlayment, I believe on Madison Avenue, which was we got one bid, and normally we always follow the law. As long as I am here, that law will be followed to the letter. And if I even think that it might not be a part of the law, we're going to follow it. We're going to do the right thing always. And we put things out for bid, and there's a threshold that we have to have that requires us to send it out for sealed bid. Now, sometimes we get, like in this particular instance, we had one bidder, and they, that bid came in at $361,558 for an overlayment. And there may have been some cents in there, but I didn't write that down. But typically we'll have one or two or three or four or five. I think we had like 6 bidders on the fire station, right? And then we go through and we have to make sure that they have their bid bonds. And, there's this big, giant procedure that we have to go through to make sure that they're qualified and that we don't have to reject bids or whatever. But we're trying to do little chunks of, streets that need to be rehabilitated. And so we've got that planned, and we only had one bidder, and it's just because, again, oftentimes it's the resources supply that do we have the qualified contractors to do certain things. And so they might be interested, they may not, there's a cost in mobilizations, those sorts of things. So we went through and that was an action item which was approved, and everything last night was approved. But it was Adams Avenue. I don't remember what I said. It was Adams Avenue improvements. And let's see. We've got the consideration with the Iowa Economic Development for the Innovative Rural Housing Grant. There's a grant that will help us not only set policies and procedures for the divestments of properties and vacant buildings and all of these things that we need to do and help us with tearing down old houses that people have neglected and no longer
public safety issues and things of that nature.
So and we do have a few houses that need to be torn down, and nobody's overseeing those properties, and there's this thing called the broken window effect, and basically they sit for so long and somebody breaks a window and then there breaks two windows, and then you've got people going in there and exploring and doing all these things, and it becomes an attractive nuisance, and we have to do, the city has to do whatever it can not to infringe on personal property rights, but also keep that public safety in mind, that we have to sometimes nudge people to do the right thing. We need people to be grown-ups and take care of their properties, and make sure that we're also keeping the public safe. And you have kids out playing and they're like, oh, there's an abandoned house, let's go see what that's about. And then next thing you know, we've got
curious,
trouble.
And I do know that I think the couple of properties around town that the city has kind of had to get involved with and step in and things like that, they now have new houses on them. I think thanks to Grow Fairfield.
That's right.
And I drive by those houses all the time. They're on my way to where I live.
Yeah.
And they look absolutely beautiful houses. So.
Yeah. And the city doesn't want to be in the real estate business. We do not, and we don't want to tell you to mow your yard. We do not want to, but there are just people. There are some people that they can't. They're struggling, and then we actually try to help those people. Their yard's overgrown, and you've got an 80-year-old grandma that she can't mow her yard, and she doesn't have any family around here, and so we find out who those people are, and we'll actually go and say, okay, let's help you. And if not, if you don't want to mow your property, then we're going to mow it for you, because we have city codes that we have to enforce, and what you do to your property actually affects your neighbor. That's right. That's absolutely right. And I'm no exception. I have to mind my P's and Q's. I live in town. I'm a taxpayer, and I have neighbors. And if I do something they don't like, they will tell me about it. So anyway, I'm very, very careful. And like I said, we always try to have the conversation first before we move to the next levels. And then it doesn't matter. They always say, one fun fact a lot of people don't know is, municipalities are either home rule or Dillon's rules, right? So Fairfield is a home rule city, and that means that we can kind of do what we want, but we still have to follow state laws. Dillon's rule says we're going to follow what the state tells us to do always, and we're going to do it their way. Dillon's rule says, for an example, the state law says that a road is 35 miles an hour in this area. And home rule would say, well, we can meet or exceed that. So that means that, we think 35 miles an hour is too fast. So we're going to make it 30 miles an hour. So we're actually exceeding what the state of Iowa says. And this is just an example. It's not real. But we can't say, well, we don't think it's fast enough. We're going to make it 55. And we can't do that. So
you can't go beyond what's already being
right. So we don't
written into law.
We don't get to just do whatever we want to do. So there's that understanding
balance.
Of what we we have a balance in everything that we do. Right now, we've got something that we've been talking about is we had an action item and a public hearing on the matter of amendment of Chapter 11.4, the recreation activities on reservoirs. So we have multiple reservoirs in the city of Fairfield. They used to be our water source, but now we're on the Jordan Wells, but they're actually our recreation areas, and they always have been. But there are very specific rules that basically before they were no longer our water source, we made sure that there were no motorized watercraft, so no ski-doos, no motorboats, no, all sorts of things. So you can paddle your boats, you can have canoes, and you can have, but we had to make sure that they were in alignment with our code. And if our code's out of alignment with our policies, then we need to make sure that we do some course correction. And as we go through, our city code is 900 pages. So going through them one at a time, it's really taking.
It's a lot of work.
It's you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and we find these things and we try to realign them. So
and things change over the years too.
They do.
The demands of the community and things of that nature. So
right,
you're always going to have things that get
a
little wonky over time, and then like you said, you got to course correct and bring them back into
alignment. And the Iowa State Code, we're always going to be in alignment with. So what people need to understand is we have federal law, we have state law, and then of course we have the county, and then us, right? And so we always have to follow federal law and state law, and then we go into the county and we're in alignment with the county. And if we find things that the county is doing, then the county is going to align with the state. We're going to align with the county and the state and the federal government and so on. So that's kind of what we're doing is we're going through and we're trying to make sure that we're in alignment not only with the state and federal laws, but also with the county. And we're supposed to be working together. And, we all have our toys in this one big sandbox, right? And so we want to make sure that we're all on the same page doing the right things. And the federal laws and the state laws change consistently. And in fact, I have a conference tomorrow that, we're going to be talking about budgetary laws and how the state is changing how we do business. It changes every year. And we go through and we figure out what we've got to do next. And then sometimes it's devastating, because our tax dollars is what makes the services happen, right?
Exactly.
So if we want it, we got to pay for it. So, and, so we went through and we did that. We're on the third and final reading for that.
I would say I think we're on the third and final reading for 2 or 3 other ones too, as well.
Right. So there's one consideration of the amendment for chapter 10.3 streets with 35 miles an hour per limit. I just talked about that. And so there is a particular road on Walton Road that we've had multiple complaints that the speed limit is too fast. And so they asked us to change that, and they did the calculations. And there's an engineering algorithm for just about everything that we do, whether it's an intersection or a speed limit or a sidewalk or whatever it may be, that we have to really look at it and figure out where it falls in that matrix and say, okay, this is what we can do. And so what did we do? We met or exceeded that speed limit. So I think it was at 40, 45 miles an hour, and we lowered it down for safety aspects, because the one thing that municipalities always do is do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Now, and what that means is that we might hear one complaint, but that doesn't necessarily change everything. What we really need to do is we think about how does it affect everybody in the city and the county. So there's 14,000 people in this county. There's 10,000 people in this town. So when we do one thing, how does it affect everybody, not just, 5 or 6 people.
An individual or a handful of people.
Right.
Yeah.
And it could be one tragic accident, right? So, and we have somebody hit in the street, and then we have to go, why did that happen? And then we go back through and we look through any sorts of reports, and then we may have to tweak something to make sure that we're bringing things back into alignment. And something may change that says, okay, we have to address this and we have to address it immediately. And we may have had something else on our radar, but that becomes our focus because somebody might be in danger. And ultimately, we're not trying to be Big Brother, but we also try to protect people from themselves.
Right? We're a community. We're all in it together.
Right.
We want to be able to keep our community safe.
Yeah. And so one of the biggest things that I deal with every week is we will have a phone call and somebody says, hey, so-and-so is doing this. I want you to go fix that. I want you to tell them they can't do that anymore. And we can't be big brother and go, okay, well, he doesn't like this, so you got to. We have to make sure that it's within our codes, and if they're not breaking the rules, you can just be mad about it. But if it's breaking our codes, we're going to say, okay, we've got a report. We've got to look at this. How can we help you fix it? Because we can't do this anymore. And so we really have to make sure that when we do things, you might bring something to our attention. We're going to look at it, and then we're going to start, I want to say, massage the law to where it helps everybody, right? And so we just want to make sure that how does it impact the entire mass of what we're doing, right?
Well, I know one of the things, saying is government moves slow.
Right.
There's a reason for that. It's because, your focus may be here. It now needs to shift over here. Right. So then that other process slows down, takes its seat on the back burner. Right. So something else that's priority can be handled and then go back to it.
Right. And behind the scenes, that we're actually pulling documents and we're looking through things, and there's probably a lot we know that everybody else doesn't know, but we're working trying to figure out these solutions and presenting the information that we've got, but we're not necessarily going out and going over, because we could belabor just a dozen items for months, and sometimes we actually do those things, but oftentimes we're just taking care of an issue because we don't want to talk about it anymore. We know this needs to be done. This is in the alignment of what we need to be doing, and we're going to do it. And then we bring it to council and say, this is what we got, and this is where we're headed. And they say yes or no. And they ultimately, the council is our boss. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that say yes or no to everything. And we're getting ready to go into one more thing that that we've had a very large problem, and that is dogs running astray throughout our community. and we have leash laws, and people aren't following them. And this isn't Dodge City and the Wild West, and that we've got somebody that's going to write you a ticket every time somebody makes a mistake, because I can tell you that dogs get out of houses and they run off. And they see a squirrel, and the next thing you know, they see a deer, and the next thing you know, and they're just gonzo, and somebody's lost their animal. And but there are other people that I've worked in municipalities that say we have a leash law, or your animal needs to be under control of the command of your voice. So the leash law is there, but basically it's about control of that animal. And in the city of Fairfield, we have a leash law. It says, you're walking your dog, it needs to be on a leash. Mm-hmm. And, and I can tell you, I have a dog, and she absolutely is under my voice command, but I put her on a leash when we're going for a walk. Right. And sometimes they get off. Well, but people are sometimes, we're not trying to be offensive when we're saying be a responsible pet owner, don't let your dogs run around town. Right. But they just let their dogs out and they run off. And then, so if they find that animal, then the first offense, they've raised the fines from $50 to $75, and from $75 to $100, and from $100 to $125. So they're raising those fees. So that's the first. But typically, if an officer were to see you walking your dog off leash, they're going to say, "Hey, where's your leash? Get one. Please do it now, so I don't have to write you a ticket." Right? Mm-hmm. And then the other one is you've got this dog running around this neighborhood, and they're like, They want the officer to go, and they got to capture the dog. They got to find the dog's owner. They've got to do all of these things, and that takes some time. So that's kind of a problem. Is we need people to understand that I would prefer that our officers are working accidents, or taking care of a child, or missing persons, or those are the big things. And then they're running around chasing after somebody's animal that's really somebody else's responsibility. And, they have to prioritize, because we don't have a lot of cops. We've got, right now, I think we're at 10, I believe. And we've got some over in active duty. But, so you've got 3 cops on duty, and 3 for each shift. And they're running around, going from one thing to the next, and then we've got dog reports, and then they don't have time, and then people are upset because we don't have time to deal with these animals, and because they're busy trying to help someone
And
else.
like you said, things happen. Animals do get out. You're at work and the animal decides to find a way out.
Right.
Type thing. Or, you open the door to go do something. The dog runs out between your feet chasing a squirrel. And,
Right.
Like you said, gonzo, they're gone.
Hole in the fence.
And so it's one of those things, we do live in a community, though. So you got to be mindful. You got to be aware. Not everybody is comfortable with dogs.
Yeah.
I know several pit bulls. They're the friendliest dogs in the world, and they wouldn't hurt a fly.
Right.
But there are pit bulls out there that do get aggressive and things like that. And so it's being mindful of your neighbor, being mindful of the community you live in,
Right.
and kind of going from there. But like you said, unfortunately, there's times where you got to incentivize people to sometimes do the right thing. And so raising a fee and things like that, that's what the city can do to incentivize that.
Yeah, it's no different than a speeding ticket. I mean, the speed limit's 55 miles an hour, and you drive 75 miles an hour. Most likely, you're going to get pulled over, and you're going to get a ticket, and that's the lesson, right? Just because if you want people to pay attention, hit them in their wallet, and we don't want to do that, but that's how we get people to fall in line of saying, these are our rules. Please follow them. It's no different than your own household. Mm-hmm. You have rules in your house, and if your child doesn't want to follow your rules,
don't touch that thermostat.
Yeah, they get grounded or they get some sort of punishment, right? So it's a disciplinary system even for adults, mm-hmm. and some people are like, I don't mind a speeding ticket. I got to get there. So, it just depends on what people are wanting to do and deal with. So the next thing is right now. There was an ordinance for consideration for TIFing our new housing development, the Sunrise Trail. And basically what that does is the property taxes that are collected in that area, there's infrastructure going in, right? Mm-hmm. So there's streets, water, sewer, electric, all of this infrastructure in order for those houses to be built. And then the city goes out and borrows money. And then the people that buy the houses and build the houses and all the property taxes are collected, that money gets put into that infrastructure fund to pay that money back, because the city just doesn't have money laying around to build all these brand new roads. And that goes in for when you're building your house kind of thing, that you pay for the infrastructure that's around it, just like we all do. The water mains, that's what the water bills are for, is it actually keeps, that infrastructure in place. And, people complain that my water bill is too high, my electricity bill is too high, but there's overhead. And we're not out making a profit. We're just out making improvements. And, we're still under a consent order, and we're still doing, all of these repairs to our sewer systems and that sort of thing. But as we add to it, then we need to make sure that infrastructure burden is not necessarily passed on to everyone. It's just passed on by that one particular area that they're paying for that infrastructure, and that's what that's headed in for.
And we've had several TIF districts, I want to say, around the community, serving its purpose and being used to its full effect, and has been really handy for the city to have access to the ability for those TIFs.
It's a very good tool to help get that infrastructure in place, make it attractive for new houses. And, if we can do that, then, we're just kind of the middleman and, making sure that these things get built. And then it makes it attractive for these developers to come in and build. We've got some really good things on the horizon. And, housing is one of those things that, this is... It's not a plug. It's an actual fact that for economic development, you need affordable housing, right? Mm-hmm. You need things to do. You need good schools, right? And all of those things, are the package. You need good paying jobs. Those are the spokes of the wheel of economic development, of not only getting people here, but getting people to stay here, raise their families here. And, and if you don't have a good housing stock, if you don't have good paying jobs, you don't have good schools, they're going to go somewhere else. And our job, you know, we're not saying that we're going to grow by leaps and bounds, but we definitely, the things that we have, we definitely want to take care of them. And, you know, I guarantee you that if the water stops flowing, there's a problem. If your house is on fire, nobody shows up, there's a problem.
There's a problem.
If there's if you know, if there's a car accident and nobody shows up, there's a problem. And so our tax dollars pay for those things. And, you know, and the people that do those jobs love those jobs. And I do what I do because I love it. And yeah, there are days that I get frustrated because, you know, they think we should be doing something different. But ultimately, the people that are doing it and the people that appreciate what we do is why we do it. And it's amazing when somebody is so gracious because we actually are trying to do the right thing, and they see it and they recognize it and they come and tell us. And I'm going to tell you, the people that show up to the council meetings are not they're not there to pat us on the back. They're there because they're upset with us. And, you know, but the people that actually genuinely appreciate what we do, they'll call us and tell us and go, hey, you know, I appreciate what you did for me today. And we really do work hard at, you know, trying to solve problems for people that they may run into. And there are certain things that we can't do anything about. And we'll say, well, let's talk to this person. Maybe they can help you, because we can't do anything about it that is outside of our scope. And so that's fulfilling. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I know just recently we had a water main break on the road that I live on. And I want to say crews were there, I want to say within an hour of it being called in and whatnot. And I walked over and told a couple of guys, thank you for the quick response. And we had our water back, you know, running, I want to say about an hour after that. So, I mean, they were really good. They were out there. It was past, you know, working hours. It was, you know, getting dark, and they were out there working.
And I can tell you that we've got a lot of good employees. And these people are so dedicated. They, you know, just like the holidays are coming up and they'll be having Thanksgiving dinner just like the rest of us, right? And if a water main breaks, they're getting up from the dinner table. They're going to get a call from me. They're going to get a call from dispatch. They're going to get a call from somebody, and they're going to leave, and they're going to do it because that's their job. But they do it not only because they love it, because they're feeding their families too. You know, we all do we all have, you know, our seat at the table, right? Or the seat on the bus. We just have different jobs. And so we're doing it together. And I really am proud of the work that they all do, and including the guy that's sitting right next to me. So,
well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So
I do enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
So.
And let's see, we didn't have a lot of, the mayor wasn't there. So the idea, we talked about Mayor Pro Tem versus the mayor. Mayor Pro Tem is always assigned. And so, but basically we always have redundancy in everything that we do, right? So no matter what job we have, you don't want somebody that's their only job and nobody else can do their job. It's not because that, you know, they're afraid of somebody taking their job, but it's because if you only have one person doing that one job and they're the only ones that know how to do it and they're gone, that job doesn't get done. And
that's a bad problem to have.
That's a terrible problem to have. And they're like, well, you have to wait until they get back, you know? So basically the mayor was gone. So you have a mayor pro tem to fill in, to orchestrate that meeting. So that's basically what it is they're running the meeting. Now, that mayor pro tem is a council member. And that council member has a right to vote. So now with our mayor, the mayor does not have veto power. The mayor does not have a voting power. She runs the meeting, right? He or she, whichever it may be. But at this time, she runs the meeting. And she does all these other things, and she helps administration. But basically her job at that moment is running that meeting and making sure that things are followed through parliamentary procedures, right? So the way that we run council is the way that every city in America is run. So, and I've been in a lot of places in council meetings. I mean, there's a few tweaks here and there, but they're run basically
They're
the same.
governed by the same set of rules,
Right.
essentially.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, some cities have a council, some cities have a commission, city commission rather than a council. Some cities have a board of directors rather than council members, but they essentially are all the same. They're elected positions. Some have a strong mayor form of government. Some have a ceremonial form of government, and all sorts of different kinds, but essentially they are run the same. And so we just need to make sure that those are moving. And then again, if we don't have a quorum for a council vote, then that meeting doesn't happen. We can't have it, right?
yeah,
So
no business can be conducted.
and then it gets moved to the next council. It hasn't happened since I've been here, but we did have one council member that was absent, but the meeting has moved forward. So, and there are cities that have 3 council members rather than 7, or I know some cities have 9 council members, and so they have different districts. So
but that's really nice to know when something does happen, something does change. You understand what's going on,
Right.
Like the mayor pro tem still can vote because they are a council member and things
Right.
of that nature, where the mayor cannot.
right.
So
Right. And so, everybody has their hobbies, and mine has always been municipal government. And when I go on vacation, I look to see how the city's run. And I know, and it's weird, especially to my family. They're like, Dad, can you
not work while you're on vacation?
Can you ride the roller coaster rather than look how the city streets are, look?
I do the same thing. My family finds it really annoying.
Yeah.
I'm always checking out what another community is doing video wise and things like that. So
so I always try to give a city report, and I don't typically talk about it. I used to when I first got here. I would go and read the report, and they're like, "Stop reading the report, Doug. Just if there's something you really want to say it." But other than that, it's there for you to go over. But I will tell you that we had a holiday. There's this holiday tradition of the spook ride on Halloween. Went off without a hitch. Everybody loves it, but we have some people tell us that it's too scary. And so we actually did a kid version of that, but we try to make sure that, it might be PG-13, I guess, but we actually have a little one's ride. And so that went off really good. October was breast cancer awareness. So we all wore pink, and we all got our picture taken and stuff in support, because that affects millions of Americans every year. The first frost came. That's really important, because that tells us that gears are shifting. So the street department's going from street work repair to winter duties, which is usually tree trimming and all the things that they've put off because their priorities shift and they're doing something else. But the parks department, they stop mowing and they're going to facilities and they're doing this and they're doing that. So everybody changes. I mean, even our water meter readers, during the summertime, I believe the sewer department takes on those duties, and then in the wintertime, the water department does. And so we flip flop back and forth, and we do different things. So,
and it's one city department, crossing over, helping another city department, and really trying to utilize the best time where.
Yeah, and so another thing that we've been working on for months and months. And it just takes so long to figure out is that we've been working on a new city hall survey, and I have not gotten with everybody to tweak out the survey and get that out. But what we've realized that we've been in the same city hall for the last 50 years. I literally have people sitting in the hallway, and we're turning conference rooms into offices.
I can attest to that.
Yeah. And honestly, like right now, I have to go to a different building to have this conversation with Jason. And so we're wanting not only the public to weigh in on what they expect from City Hall and what that looks like, but also a staff survey and what that looks like to the employees. And I can tell you that the police department has actually talked to me about it, and the fire department's talked to me about it. And right now we're building a fire station, and what does that look like? But we are, the building is old, and we've talked about renovating. We've talked about, building up. We've talked about moving. We've talked about, adding on. We've talked about all these different things, but we want a community space. And there's something that I really want to get across, because I actually talked about it Monday night, is there, not everybody, mostly every citizen that comes into City Hall, they're very nice. They understand what we're doing. But there are some people that come in and they're not happy. And sometimes they're extremely aggressive. And, the people up front, they're just doing their jobs, and they're not gonna break off because you're upset and do things the way the upset person wants them done. They're gonna do them according to the city policy mandated by the council. And so we've actually had to put eyes where, way back in the day, I've been doing this for 3 decades, right? And so cameras were $1,000 a piece. Now I can buy 12 of them for $300. And so we're putting eyes on everything. We want to be not only transparent, but we also want to protect our employees. And smaller towns, they have less safety. And it's really not an us versus them. We want to work together, but we definitely need to make sure that, and I can tell you that we actually had a telephone conversation that was recorded that threatened to shoot employees. We can't do this.
No, that's
right,
not a good thing to have going on.
So we're definitely in this defensive posture of, listen, we're going to hear you, we're going to work with you, we're going to do these things, but we also have to protect our employees, because I don't want to make the phone call to the family, right? And so we're really working on, what is the next thing, because we actually want City Hall to be inviting. We want people to actually come to City Hall and hang out. And we had talked about, is there an atrium where, they can come in and they can book a room and they can have not only their little Rotary Club meeting, and they can drink some coffee or whatever they want to do, or they could come in there and maybe have lunch and talk to us, and, have this, a place where it's for the public, a place where it's for the staff, and then a place for everybody. And then we all meet together and we converge. And that's really what we're trying to do, because, I don't go to McDonald's and order my food and then go around the corner. Oops, sorry, Jason. Go around the corner and, tell them how to do their jobs. I mean, you know what I mean? So if I'm upset, then I'm going to talk to a manager, and typically they talk to me, or they'll talk to Rebecca, or they'll talk to somebody and try to resolve their issues. And I think we do a smashing job, and everybody meets in the middle. And that's kind of what we want to do with City Hall that we're talking about. The next thing that I talked about is the city app. We have been working for months and months and months on getting this app system to where people can get push notifications. And we do have a little bit of that, but it's not awesome. So we're working with several companies to, tell us what they can provide us, what's it going to cost, because everything that we do is based on cost, effectiveness, and durability. And what's it going to look like? And is it going to be long lasting? Are we getting the best bang for our buck? Because honestly, it's all of our money that we're using.
I was gonna say it's the community's tax dollars that pays for this stuff. So
Right.
You want the most bang for your buck,
Right.
Not only as running the city, but as a person in the city paying taxes.
Right.
You want to make sure that money's going to where it needs to be. And I know with like the whole, you have radio stations shutting down, you got newspapers struggling, you got social media doing its thing. And it's so hard to find the right avenue because everything's changing in the mix. But, you've got the people who traditionally went to radio going, why is it not on the radio? Why don't we have a radio station? I don't know what's going on because I only listen to the radio, type thing. Well, everybody has to change in kind of today's atmosphere. That includes how the city delivers information, and that includes the citizens of the community changing the way they go to look for that information.
Right.
So
and there's generational changes too that we have to talk about, is that my generation, we use Facebook, and my daughter's generation, they use Snapchat and Instagram, and then there's some other apps, and I just got tired of different app. They get bored and they go on to something else, and they're like, Dad, only old people use Facebook. So, but that's the one tool that we really have to kind of reach out. And so, we're trying to push out, and then technology changes, right? And so
all the time.
and so what's that going to look like? Is it, Apple or Android or whatever it may be, or email? and what have you. So, and I can tell you that the things that we're building today, we're not building it for us. I mean, in 20 years, I'm going to be retired and I may not even be on the earth anymore, but we're building it for our children or grandchildren, right? And so we have to think about what they want. And I say that consistently over and over again. I more have the aptitude to see, and I don't go down the street and talk to, children that often because that's weird. But if I happen to have a conversation with, some kiddos that come in and say, hey, if Fairfield had 3 things, what would they be? What would you want? And their answers would really surprise you. And one of them actually said something to me that says, I'd like to have Wi-Fi in our parks. And I thought, that's a fantastic idea. Let's do that. And we haven't done it yet because of cost, right? But that's what they want. Would I want that? Not really. But, because I don't use my phone that much. I mean, it is kind of a pocket office, right? But while they're waiting on mom to get off work or they're in an appointment or whatever, they're on their phone doing their homework or they're playing video games or whatever. And I don't do any of those things. My homework is my email, but my cellular plan can do that. So that is something that they like tighter spaces. They want to be able to walk where they need to get to places, and they want to live and work and play all in one little small area. Where our generation, we have big homes and we've got property and we farms and all of those things, and that's not what they really want. And so that makes us change our development strategies. And that's something that we're always looking at. And that's how this app comes into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was the fire station. It is now officially, walls are coming. 10 walls a day. They are really getting things up and moving fast. The crane's up. And they originally started off slow, and it's picking up speed. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, the walls of the fire station will be there. Then you've got the flooring and the roof. And then, at first, while they were building the foundations, it looked like they weren't doing anything. And now
you got to do all the prep. You got to do all the things that nobody really sees to make it all happen.
Yeah. And then once you get it in the dry, which means roof, floor, windows, doors, then it'll look like nothing's happening again because you got trades, right? You've got plumbers and electricians and carpenters and all the stuff. And then then it just looks like nothing's happening. And then you'll have your landscaping and driveways and, all of the parking pads.
I was going to say, I know driving around town, the crane caught my eye. You don't really see a crane that large in Fairfield doing things very often.
Right.
So it's definitely, it'll catch your eye.
Right. And crazy thing is, and I know this is trivial things, even when they did Crow Creek Bridge, we had a crane over there. And so I do know that there are FAA rules that, at a certain height, they have to put a flag up there so that it kind of gets a pilot's attention. And then at another height, they actually have to have a light up there. So this one's small enough that it mobilized in, and then they can work, and then they put it away in the evening and, that sort of stuff. But, it's unusual to have those go in. And then we talked about, lastly, the study session that, I should have went and did that first. But we talked about the parking lot over on B and Broadway that, they are wanting to discuss. The owners of the Blue Rose would like to repave that parking lot and use it, not only fix it up, but use it as part of their venue parking. Because once that thing is going, they'd like to start on that in the spring. And what does that operation look like? Because it is a public parking lot. But they're actually wanting to invest money and pay for it because the city doesn't have the funds to just pave a parking lot. We have to plan for those things, and it goes on our capital improvements plan.
Which, by the way, just as a side note, I think is a great thing when you have a local business wanting to invest in the community. Yes, they're going to benefit from it. That's part of the reason why they're investing it. But at the same time, they're investing in the community. They see this parking lot. They see the city doesn't have the funds. to maybe maintain it or refinish it or do whatever. And they're willing to help bridge that gap. So I think that's great, but there's also a lot of things that go into the separation of public and private.
So when we have these public-private partnerships, which is legal, but it has to be written and it has to be done in a very specific way. And what does that look like? And then so we get our attorneys involved and we make sure that we try to vet out every sort of loophole, every sort of everything, so that both parties are protected and that everybody gets what they want. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily pan out the way we want it to, but it gets us where we want to be. So there's that. So the other thing that we talked about, and then one last thing that I wanted to say is, you've said this and other people have said this, that there are private businesses that recognize that the city doesn't have the money to do these sorts of things. So they're willing to get what they want, pay for the things that they want. And they work with us to make that happen. So that's really important because it really does make it attractive for businesses to thrive here. And then the second thing on the agenda was vagrancy. And so Fairfield does have vagrancy and homeless. We don't have a lot, and less than 3%. And I keep hearing varying numbers. I can tell you that I've seen them myself. And we,
there are a handful that,
right,
you don't have to go looking to see them, but
right,
for the most part, it's easy to miss too.
Right. And so, there's lots of reason why there's homeless. And compared to other cities that I've seen or I've been involved in, we don't have a huge, homeless problem, but it's here. And it's and we reach out, to the churches, and, we've got the Golden Magnolia, and we've got all sorts of different places that will help. And like right now, it's a critical time because it's getting colder, and and we've got people on the street, and we don't really have warming shelters. And I can tell you that other cities that I've been involved with, they do have a homeless shelter, and they do actually have an animal shelter, and the city gets involved, and it's extremely expensive, and they tend not to get the results that they're looking for. And we really want to get these people back on their feet. And there's all sorts of different reasons why they're homeless. And there are some people that choose to be homeless. They don't.
I was going to say that actually kind of shocked me when Chief Thomas said that there are several homeless in Fairfield that choose that lifestyle.
Right.
That's what they prefer.
Right.
And so, when the police do offer them the resources that are either in our community or around our community in the surrounding areas, they turn them down.
Right.
Because they're living the life they want to live.
Right. And then there are people that have fallen on bad times, and they're homeless. They've lost their home because they lost their job, and they may be living on the street, or they may be living in their car. And, so that you've got those. And then you've got people that, they have disorders, and, that people in their lives have turned their back on them, and they've got no place else to go, but they don't really want to go to certain places, and they just want to be left alone.
Yep.
And so we try to get them help if we can. And you've got the people that are unintentionally homeless, we try to point them to resources to where that we can get them shelter, we get them food, and that we can help them get a new job and those sorts of things. And we point them in to the right direction, to the right people, and get them going about their merry way. And hopefully they get back on their feet and good things happen. But there's just all sorts of different reasons. And then, so again, if we've got homeless people that are in our parks, we ask them to move on, or if they're sleeping in somebody's lobby, or, all sorts of different things that they'll do to stay warm. Or they're on private property in the woods that nobody sees until they get stumbled across. And then they're like, I need them to go away. And then the police get involved. But we really want to work with them rather than be hard on them. And this is a very kind community. And, when I've been to other cities, that they have thousands, they're 3,000 homeless individuals, and they have what they call the next step day room, which is where they feed them, and then they have a shelter where they can sleep, and all of these things. And some of them don't like rules, and they'll make them follow rules, and they don't like, that doesn't work for me, I'm not coming here again. So, and then you've got panhandlers and those sorts of things. And sometimes panhandlers, they actually have their own vehicles and they have their own houses. That's just their job.
Yep.
But some of them
which kind of surprises me as well.
I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen people that are actually panhandling because they need money, and you work with them as best you can and make sure that if they're going to do it, they're going to do it safely and they're going to do it legally. That's
now I know one of the other things that Chief Thomas mentioned that I think is probably good to repeat here is it's not a crime to be homeless.
Nope.
And so I think sometimes people have this misconception, type thing. Well, they're in the hallway or whatever, I don't want them here, make them leave, type thing. Well, yeah, they can ask them to leave and, leave immediately and things like that. And I think even Chief said most do. Most, or, listen and comply and, type thing like that. But it's not a crime. It's I want to say a failure of our society in some ways that we can't seem to help them better. But yeah, it's not like they can just be arrested just for being homeless.
Right. And that's the other thing is we need to, instead of throwing the book at them, we need to throw resources at them and say, here we go. And then if you need a meal, then this is where we go. Or if you need, whatever it may be, then we try to get them there. And sometimes you can help them, sometimes you can't.
Yep.
But it's a problem. Again, it's not new to Fairfield. It's not specific to Fairfield. This is a nationwide problem, and it's no different than some of the other civic problems that we have. We just try to do the best we can to facilitate some sort of resolve or some sort of find a solution some way. It's really important.
So yeah. Well, after that, anything else? I think we were pretty darn thorough.
Yeah. I mean, they asked me to go over it, and I went over it. And if you've got any other questions, I'm always willing to sit down with people and talk. And we're starting to prep for budget season. So we are on a fiscal year, not a calendar year. So during the calendar year, we prepare for the fiscal year. And so... And December, we're starting the budget workshops right now, and then we'll start moving in and start working on the budget probably in the spring and get all of those budget presentations done. And then fiscal years July 1.
Well, I know Fairfield Media Center and the Carnegie Museum, we're waiting for the email that's got the documents on it,
Yep.
Type thing. So yeah, we're very much aware that budget season is in the air.
Yeah, and so new council members, them wanting to understand what we do. When I first got here, I kind of changed it, tried to make it as easy as I possibly could. And we're just building on that. And there's, again, software out there that actually does what we do in a software format, and we're kind of doing it old school with spreadsheets. And I would love to actually be able to publish our spreadsheets on the internet, but
it's a binder.
It's an 80-page binder, and it's 8.5 by 14, I think, or 17, and it does not look well on the website. And then if you try to print it off, nothing would line up. And it's really, we can't get it to format correctly. And so we're working on that without trying to spend a fortune having a company do it for us.
Exactly. But again, you're trying to get the most bang for your buck out of the taxpayer.
It's cheaper for me to just hit print and hand you a copy. So it's easier that way. So.
Well, Doug, thank you for joining us on another council wrap up. And I think I've said before, I don't envy your guys' job over at City Hall, but I definitely thank everyone at City Hall for doing the job to the best of their abilities. It's what makes a community run. We're all in it together. We're all neighbors.
Yeah.
And so So yeah, be kind. Let's all be kind to one another. But again, that's a wrap up for us. We'll see you guys here following the next council meeting, I believe on the 24th,
Right.
I believe. And we'll see you then.